is what I want for the jingle on my podcast.
It's going to be called John Bolton's podcast. Know that if I said all.
There's no you in Bolton, but I guess that doesn't matter if you're singing it. And I'm a writer. See if you can work that in some way. Basically, just make me sound awesome. Cheers.
Day 18. Anyone who's actually been following these will recognise that I've missed a few. Quite a few. There's several reasons for that. Myriad reasons, if you like. First and foremost, I haven't really had the time. But a large part of the problem has been that the films have just been sort of crap. And to be honest, it's you just sort of think, what's the point? You know, all I'm going to do is sit here and moan about whichever film it is I watched. And that just seems sort of pointless. Fun, really, from my point of view, but pointless for anybody else. So I thought I'd do a kind of story so far type podcast, where a quick kind of summary of where we're up to, what's coming up, and hopefully that will kind of bridge the gap and, you know, cover up the fact that I've missed so many. I had planned to do one every day of the month. I really did have the very best intentions. So we started off with When a Stranger Calls on the 1st. That was quite good. I have quite a strong affection for When a Stranger Calls from when I watched it when I was a lot younger. Part of the reason why I started this whole process off with that film was to get things off on a positive note. Nightmare on Elm Street on day 2. That was good. Like Nightmare on Elm Street, bit of a classic. Can't really go wrong with that. Day 3, Elm Street Part 2. The poor follow-up, the difficult second album. A few bits that I sort of liked, but largely quite dreadful. Killer Clowns from Outer Space came in at number 4. Less said about that, the better, really. VHS on day 5 and VHS 2 on day 6, where I was joined by Pete, and they were both really good. Again, VHS 2, the difficult second album, but still enjoyable. Blair Witch on day 7 was awful. Day 8, Creep. It's alright. Just... yeah, it was alright. There were some good bits. Halloween, day 9, watched it with the boy. Classic, love Halloween. Probably of all the ones I've watched so far this month, my second favourite after When a Stranger Calls. If not actually, might be my favourite so far. Emily on day 10. I didn't say much about that. It was alright. You know. Christine on day 11. The last podcast I did was fine, I guess, which brings us to the 18th. Now, it's the 18th of October today. I haven't watched the horror film for the 18th yet. That is as yet undecided. What I am going to do is very quickly take you through the films that I've watched since the last podcast up until today, in no particular order because I can't remember. This actually might be the exact right order thinking about it. But anyway, so the first one I watched was House. Now, House, I remember watching when I was younger. A friend and I rented it from a video shop in the town where we lived, obviously. It's convenient. And it's a horror comedy, and I don't like horror comedies because often they're neither funny nor scary, and that just sort of betrays the point of the entire exercise. The only occasion I can think of where a horror comedy is actually delivered on both levels is Shaun of the Dead. And frankly, that delivers more on a comedy level than it does on a horror level. But anyway, so I watched House, and I remember watching it, and I remember this scene where something happens. It's quite scary and dramatic and all that. And then the scene cuts to the next scene, and the next scene is much more kind of sort of not humorous exactly, but much more sort of relaxed. And there's a massive shift in music from dramatic scary music to silly comedy music. And so I was kind of waiting for that scene all the way through, and it came, and it wasn't at all how I remembered, the way things never quite are. And that's it. That is it. That was the only bit I really liked. As with a couple of films so far this month, I kind of drifted off to sleep before the end, which, you know, you could argue is quite unprofessional of somebody who's meant to be reviewing films. Equally, you could argue, make your films better. So the only thing of any interest to me in House, other than the sort of novelty value of at least having watched it in more recent years, so I've got a fresher memory of it. Most of it. Was that the hotel manager from Ghostbusters was in it. And that's it. That's the only thing that sticks in my mind, which is not good. Then the next night, I watched Sleepaway Camp. Now, I have to bring up the Wikipedia entry for that because I don't know anything about it. I'd heard of it. It was one of those. I think because it's an 80s horror film, I had a sort of natural inclination to want to see it. Really liked it. Actually, it was really good. It was very, very similar thematically and everything else to Friday the 13th, or at least not necessarily the first one, but to that franchise. But I really liked it. I thought it was quite well put together. I thought the kills and stuff were quite inspired. Letting off a load of bees into a toilet cubicle, which you've rammed shut with a broom handle or something. Brilliant! You wouldn't get Jason doing that. He'd just put a machete through your skull. Yeah, I really liked it. Now, supposedly Sleepaway Camp has this big shock ending. Now, obviously, because I found out before I watched it that it has this big shock ending, I spent much of the first 20 minutes wondering what the big shock ending was going to be. And my first thought was, it's probably the girl. And it was. So that was... It's not disappointing exactly, but, it was like when I went to go and see The Sixth Sense. I knew there was like this twist ending, and so I spent most of the film trying to work out what the twist was, rather than really fully enjoying the film. But it's fine. So Sleepaway Camp, I really liked. That was really good. That kind of moved things up a little bit. If you imagine like a sort of sinus wave, whatever they're called, of sort of enjoyment of this whole process this month, it went up. It went up with Sleepaway Camp. Race with the Devil the next night. Now, I love Race with the Devil. I watched it on TV one night when I was at school. So Race with the Devil is about... I haven't told you what these things are about, have I? House, bloke moves into a haunted house, basically. Sleepaway Camp, imagine Friday the 13th, sort of that. Race with the Devil. So basically there's a group of people, 2 couples and a dog, go off in a big camper van on holiday. And whilst they're on this trip, the 2 men witness the satanic ritual taking place, and they get spotted, and the Satanists kind of pursue them, but they get away, and then the whole rest of the film really is just them trying to get away from them. And there's this amazing sense of paranoia, because there's a couple of characters in particular, but one main one whose name eludes me, it's the blonde woman, if that helps, is utterly convinced that everyone's in on it, and wherever they go, everyone's watching them. And it's filmed in such a way that you wonder if maybe that's the case. Is the sheriff in on it? Is the guy that fixes the back window in on it? Are the people at the pool in on it? And then it transpires right at the very end that they all were. And it's just brilliant. It's really well done. It's just good storytelling and good acting and good music and good direction and good cinematography all put together. And it's really enjoyable. And if you haven't seen it, obviously I've ruined it. I haven't ruined it entirely, actually. You should totally watch it. It's really, really good. And it gives me great pleasure in saying that, because it kind of feels like the month has sort of gone uphill at this point. Because the next night I watched Poltergeist 2. Now, Poltergeist 2, I actually prefer to Poltergeist 1. Partly because I guess maybe I've seen Poltergeist 1 more times. I suppose maybe that's it. I don't know. Love Poltergeist 2. Have long been of the opinion that Heather O'Rourke, who played Carol Ann, is such, or was sadly, such a brilliant actress. Given how young she was 12 when she died, I think. So she couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 or 7 or something, that area, when she was in these films. And she's brilliant in it. She's so natural, and she kind of gives it a kind of naturalism that I guess, I don't know, maybe it's easier for kids to act natural because they're kids. And they spend so much of their time imagining and pretending anyway that acting is just sort of a natural thing for them to do. I don't know. But she's brilliant in it. Poltergeist 2, I think, is really underrated. Now, there's a lot of CGI in it, and it's not the best. It's not the newest film. Give it a break. But the performances of the characters in it are brilliant. And if you can forgive it having to explain all the backstory. Now, the start of the first film, they move into this house and all this weird crap happens, and it's like, ugh. And then as the film progresses, more and more of it gets explained, and there's an ancient Indian burial ground, and it transpires there was some sort of cult and stuff that went on under the house. I don't know what's going on. But the more you explain these things, the less frightening they are. But if you can forget all of that and just enjoy the performances, it's a brilliant film. Julian Beck, who plays Kane, Reverend Kane, He is amazing in it. Now, I didn't realise this. Now, obviously, there's this kind of well-known sort of conspiracy theory, exactly like an urban legend, that there was like a curse, and loads of people who made Poltergeist all died, including the little girl. Now, that is true. Now, the little girl, Heather O'Rourke, to whom the third film is dedicated, died very shortly after they made the third film, and which is just tragic. Such a good actress. So she died. That's quite a well-known thing. Julian Beck, who played Reverend Kane, was ill with, I forget exactly what it was, cancer of some description, while they were making the second film. So actually the reason, well, not the reason exactly, a lot of it's down to his own brilliant acting, but part of the reason, I suppose, why he looks so, I don't know, sort of gaunt and everything in the film is because he was like really, really ill. I think stomach cancer or something, and he died before they'd finished making the second film. I think I'm right in saying that. And so some of the vocal work had to be done by like a voice actor, because he wasn't around to do any of the post-production stuff, which is really sad. But what a tribute to what a professional that, even though he's this ill and he must have been really suffering at this point, still turned out this amazing performance. Brilliant. So Poltergeist 2 I really like. Poltergeist 3 I watched the night after because I kind of felt like I should. I remember watching that once before. A lot of it's to do with mirrors, a lot of mirrors in it. It's alright. I mean, a lot of the ending of it's crap, to be honest, but I like it anyway. I can kind of forgive a lot of the crapness because a lot of the stuff they did with the mirrors is so clever. There's a scene quite early on, I forget the names of the cast, doesn't matter. There's a man in it. He plays Carol Ann's uncle or something, I don't know. He sort of stood talking to Nancy Allen out of RoboCop, and there's a bit where he sort of finishes talking and turns and walks away, and Nancy Allen out of RoboCop looks up at the mirror and his reflection's still there. And then Nancy Allen from RoboCop kind of turns around and sort of realises that he's disappeared and stuff, and it's a bit creepy. Now, that would mess with your head, surely. She gets over that quite fast. But anyway, loads more of that stuff happens, loads of mirrors and things. I gather the budget was minimal, and there was no computer effects. All the mirror stuff was done practically, somehow, with body doubles and stuff, I suppose. Brilliant. It's just brilliant, that bit. The ending's rubbish, really. There's a lot of this kind of falling back on them being on the other side and having to get them back from the other side and stuff. It's alright. That bit's alright, but as a film, generally, I really like it. It's not a very good film. I'm the first to admit that. But it's alright. So I like it. It's fine. As I say, I mean, Heather O'Rourke steals it all the way through. Such a good actress. So young. Tragedy. Incidentally, speaking of the curse of the whatever you want to call it of Poltergeist, the girl who played her sister in the first film was meant to be in the second film, but she was off at college. Now, whether that meant that there'd be something involving her at college or what, I don't know. She died as well. She died like a week after they finished filming the first film. Her ex-boyfriend, strangled her to death on her drive. Awful. Horrendous. So that's that. All of which brings us to day 17, on which I watched It Follows. I'm going to do a separate podcast for It Follows, I think, because I've got a few things to say about it. But that is a summary of the days that I've missed. Highlights. Probably Sleepaway Camp would be the highlight of all of that period, because it's the only one I've not seen before. And I really liked it. It's really good. There's supposedly sequels and things, and I think they're doing like a remake or something at some point. But it's good. I liked it. It's worth watching it. So there you go. Thanks very much.
Come back soon for the next episode of John Bolton's podcast. What horror movie will he be reviewing? Who knows? Who cares?